one of the prices of moving to so many places, I think, is not having the depth of relationships. And I think today, young people, my experience, something similar, for different reasons, I don't know if technology is part of that, whatever it is, it's just, I wish I had taken more time to develop deep relationships.
In today's episode, you meet Ricardo, a young man that came to the United States when he was just 18 years old, trying to discover what he wanted to do with his life. And through some bumpy roads, he discovered the love and passion to serving God. Great experience. I know you're going to love it. So welcome to a special edition of Tea Talks. Ricardo, thank you so much for accepting the invitation. I've been looking forward to hear a little bit about you, get to know you a little more. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. It's a great opportunity, and I hope we'll have a good time.
Yes. So let's start from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your childhood, growing up, where you're from, and all of that.
I was born in Ecuador, and I grew up in a boarding school. My parents are teachers, both my dad and my mom, and I grew up in this place called Santo Domingo de los Sáchilas, in between what the coast is and the highlands.
That's the city.
It really, I mean, it wasn't a city then. It was just like a little town, village, small people. Today is probably one of the, probably third, fourth largest city.
Wow.
Yeah, I grew a lot. But back then it was out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, and it was a great childhood in many ways. But at the same time, later on, you discover, what it is that you probably miss and stuff like that. But I grew up in Cade, in this school, for my first 8 years. Then after that, we moved to the city, to Guayaquil.
Okay.
And then I was there for the next 10 years.
So I'm assuming, but you can share more, if you were in a boarding school, I'm assuming this was a Christian school?
That's right. It was a Christian school. It was a Christian boarding school. It had anywhere between 600 to 1,000 students.
Wow.
Total, not all were boarding. People came from town as well, as a day school. But I have memories of my childhood. There are several memories, with one of the things that perhaps I think was part of and still is part of who I am today is the fact that my parents worked a lot. So both of them were teachers. So even though then I did not sense that or think about it, later on, my brother and I, when we talked, we realized that my parents were spending a lot of time at school, and we really grew up, on our own, basically, like
running around the school,
riding bicycles, going to the river, swimming, and doing a lot of stuff.
Which is not a bad childhood.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a lot of fun. A lot of great things happened. At the same time, I feel that that's what I see that I value today. Like my parents were hard workers. So for me, one of the highest values is to work, and
it becomes our value.
Exactly. So I think I received them from both, my dad and my mom, always looking for things to do, always investing their time in growing the school and doing things like that. So I believe it was not something they told me that I needed to do, but just by seeing them do that, it became one of the values that I have, and I think probably developing more deeper relationships also was not part of that. We were there 8 years and we moved to Guayaquil. So, the friends that you saw there, that I saw when I was a little kid, I completely lost contact with, as we moved to the city. And then at 18, I moved to the States. So I have noticed that also it is part of who I am today. I can make friends quickly, but there is not a lot of depth or deep roots,
because you're moving.
That's because of moving a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so pretty much you grew up as in a Christian household. Yeah. How was that for you? Like, let's talk about like the religious side of it. You were a kid, you're growing up, your parents work in a Christian school. How was your feelings towards religion?
The first 8 years of my life when I was there, I have only good memories, I think, of religion. My mom would always make pizza on Friday night, to start the Sabbath and things like that. And the environment, I did not experience it as being very oppressive and stuff like that. My parents were not. I have never seen them as extreme in any way. So I had a good 8 years of upbringing. I think in the way that I see God. When I was 8 years old, I decided to be baptized.
Okay.
So that was a fun time. I had a pastor, Pastor Augusto Rivas. He was a mentor, a spiritual mentor, and I remember he was the one who taught the Bible for the kids our age. So he was a very deep guy, So I enjoy that. I think later on there were other aspects that changed that made it different. But my first 8 years, when I think about them, good memories and good relationship towards religion and towards God and things like that.
That was my next question, what you just mentioned. Later on changed.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the change. Did you get to a point that you start having questions? Is this really my religion or is this my parents' religion? Did you get to a point that you start questioning God and your beliefs and things like that?
I did not experience that as much. For me, it was more, I became a very legalistic person. I had a teacher who was an amazing teacher, great person, but I did not realize that I don't know if it was, something that she wanted to do, but basically we became like little Pharisees.
So your parents didn't do that to you.
Yeah.
You did it on your own.
Exactly. Yeah. So the influence of one of my elementary school teachers, she was a great teacher. We loved learning, but we could only pray kneeling down, and
there was
then
specific rules.
There were specific ways of doing things. I remember that a lot of restrictions. And since I respected her a lot, I started embracing that. And that became part of who I became, in many ways. So I would come home and judge my parents and criticize them because they were not up to what, the teacher was saying. So I realized looking back always, when you're experiencing it, it's difficult to realize it. But looking back, I see that changed my perception of who God was and how I related to religion.
So you're the completely opposite of the majority of the youth and young adults. Usually youth and young adults get to a point they're like, this is too much. My parents are forcing this religion on me, and they rebel against God.
That's right.
You did the opposite.
That's right. Yeah. It's a strange thing, and I really embraced it and liked it, and I was very proud of it as well, So I was a good little Pharisee. Then I almost wanted, my parents were not vegetarian, so I wanted to just eat vegetarian food and just, like on Sabbath, there were things that my teacher said that we shouldn't do. So I really embraced that and developed that as an identity. But what I started noticing then, and especially in my teen years, after I graduated from elementary school and went to middle school and high school, what I realized is that I was trying to do all these things, but I had no joy. Yeah, and I think that is something that I carried for many years. Is just that trying to pursue this heaviness in religion, this trying to please God and trying to do everything right, and then not finding joy in doing that, and then the frustration and disappointment that brings. I think that's what I experienced a lot of my teen years.
So all of a sudden you start noticing, okay, I am doing all of this checklist and following all of these rules, but I don't think this is really what God wants because there is no joy.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there an event or a moment, an experience that all of a sudden kind of like clicked for you and you're like, oh, this is not it?
Yeah, it was interesting because I would see my friends, classmates, and cousins and some of my relatives, going to parties and stuff like that, and they seemed to have a lot of happiness and joy, and I felt so guilty doing that I did not try any of those things, but
you're
still,
talking about not like the Christian parties. You're talking about the world
like dancing
party
and drinking and stuff like that. Exactly.
But you didn't want that.
But I wouldn't say that I didn't want that, but I never was brave enough to do that, so I don't know if I was fearful or if I had so much, information that stopped me from doing that. But my frustration was that I would see people who were engaging in that and having the greatest time. At least it seemed that they were having this great time, and here I was trying to do what was right, but not enjoying it anyway, so it was even worse, because at least they seemed to be having fun, but here I was trying to do what is right and still having a heavier weight and a greater disappointment.
It's the two completely opposite that the devil tries to make us fall for, either complete legalism or completely,
that's right,
what do you call the other side?
I don't know, liberalism or I don't know,
or something like that. But it's like, okay, how did you get to the point?
It's very interesting the way it happened. I'm sure it happened in many different ways, but what I recall the most is I went to a Christian school in California that was very ultra conservative.
Okay.
I did not know that I was going there when I went. So
you went there, but you didn't know you were going there?
I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
Like my parents told me about it, and some missionaries told them about it. So I went believing that it was just any normal Adventist school here in the States. But when I got there, I realized that it was like it was ultra conservative, yeah. And my relatives who took me there were not Adventists, and I remember the first meal we ate. There was corn and peas, and it was just very, very vegan. And my cousins looked at me and they said, "You're not staying here. You're going with us back." By then, I was living in LA with them, and they said, "Oh, let's go back, and we'll help you to pay your way through school, but you'll study there." When I came to the States, I wanted to do engineering.
So at this point, you're already going to university?
Already starting, yeah. I had graduated from high school, and I was going to start college, yeah. So, but I told them, no, I want to be here. And it was fascinating because, you could not go to the cafeteria with jeans. You had to use slacks. There were many things like that, but I remember one thing. I signed a paper that said, "Hey, I'm here because I want to be here. And whenever I'm not satisfied with it, I can leave." So that kept me there for the whole time. But I realized there that many of my friends who had grown up with a very heavy legalism, they were leaving the church one by one. Yeah, many of my friends, they were, and the interesting part of the story.
And these were friends that were legalistic. They liked to have more of that structure.
I don't know if they liked it or not, but they had grown up in the system.
Got it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it had to do with homes in their cases. And I'm probably that's what made a difference for me. Because I did not experience that at home. For many of them, it was their home, it was the school, it was the whole thing. And then they were fed up with that, and they gave that up, and they gave God up, they gave everything up, Christianity, So for me, the interesting thing is that in this place, I encounter a deep relationship with God. And it was not through the systems, but there are two things that they had. First, they had a lot of service. We were very connected with the life of the community. And the second thing, they were very missional, very oriented in missions and things like that. So God worked through that, but there was one point specifically. I had a girlfriend there, and that I really enjoy spending time with and everything else. And we parted ways after my second year in college. She went back home, and I stayed at the school. And she wrote a note to me, and she said, "Hey, I don't think life is worth living anymore." And she wanted to commit suicide. So I talked to her and really spent a lot of time and she decided, to continue living. And the next day I was driving a little motorcycle to work, and I had an accident, a real bad accident. And I was complaining to God. And I said, "Hey, God, why? Here I'm trying to do my best. I'm working hard. I'm paying my way through school. I'm not doing all of these. I told my friend that you have plans for her. What plans do you have for me?" And then at that moment, something happened that changed the way I saw myself and life. It was almost as if I heard God speaking to me and saying, "Hey, you didn't have a helmet. It was a road that has a lot of traffic. Nothing happened to you, even though you fell. Yes, you got hurt a little bit, but you're alive. And then as long as you live, I have plans for you. I have a life, in mind for you." So for me, that really connected. And then at that moment was the first time when I decided that I wanted to share what I had found with other people full time. So I came to the States thinking about studying engineering, but that was the first time when I say, wow, what would it be to spend my whole life helping people like myself, you know, who have grown in legalism, or helping people like my friend who probably are struggling with their concepts of God, in introducing them to what God really is like, you know.
Wow. So that is the moment that pretty much my next question was going to
Mhm.
be related to your deciding your career.
Mhm.
So that is the moment that pretty much had a
Yeah, that started. I mean, there are a lot of things that I'm leaving out there, but it was interesting when I shared with my parents. They say, "Hey, God, you know, Dad, Mom, I feel that God is calling me to ministry." I thought that they were going to be excited and jump up and down, and they said, "Really? You know,
really.
why do you think why do you think that?" You know, and then I understood later that they had seen a lot of young people thinking that they were being called by God, but then
Give up
exactly giving
for
up.
some
So they say,
reason.
"Hey, think carefully about it," you know. So I was like, wow, I was shocked, you know. And I did, you know. I started praying and really asking God, hey, if this is what you want me to do, you know, please show me clearly.
Mhm.
And then through many circumstances, that's what happened. And I have never regretted that. Yeah, it was something. Ministry has not been, you know, like
Playground.
playground or everything great, but I always go back to the beginning and the calling and the experience, and that has kept me going and experiencing joy, you know, in doing that.
That is awesome. So okay, at this point you're young, you're like in your
I was
20,
I was 18, 20, yeah, by then,
18,
yeah, 20.
20. And then did you change schools to be able to
I didn't, you know. I continued there. I graduated from my pastoral ministry there. And then when I was 21, my desire in accepting the call from God was always to go back to my country and to share that with young people there. So that's what I did. I graduated and then I went back to Ecuador. And my first work was as a chaplain at a school, and
perfect for
yeah,
what you wanted to do.
I love that. It was, I mean, there are so many amazing experiences that I had with young people there. I was 21 when I finished, and I had students who were 18. So it was like we're almost
almost
the same age. So it was
so you went
great.
back to your country.
Yes.
How did you meet your wife?
Okay, so I went back to my country. I was there for 2 years, and after 2 years, I felt I needed to learn more because I gave everything that I had. You know, I had young students who were drinking, coming to stay in my apartment, so they would come to church with me. I had people who were deep into spiritualism and just ministering to them. In 2 years, I felt that I was drained, that I had given everything I had. I had, you know, students whose parents died in accidents. I had students, so I went through a lot.
It was a lot for a young person.
It was a lot. It was a lot, and I said I need to receive more so I can give. So a friend of mine who was at a Christian university, he said, hey, you know, you can come and do the Master of Divinity program here. Why don't you come? So that's what I did. I said okay. So I started selling my things. And I said, I'm going back to the States to study. And then Andrews. I went, Andrews University, that's right. So I went to the consulate. It was funny because I went to the American consulate to get my student visa, and they denied it.
Oh.
Yeah, so they said, no, you need to show proof that you have finances to pay for that. And then I went back to one of my mentors, spiritual mentors, a pastor who said, hey, so I went back and said, oh, God closed the door, you know? And then he said, do not say that God closed the door until you have tried to enter through the window. You know? So I said, what do you mean? Try it again. You know? So I gathered the papers that they asked me for, and I went. This was on Friday that they denied it. I went back on Tuesday. They interviewed me, didn't ask any of the papers, and they gave it to me. Yeah, so it was another way of God saying, hey, this is the path. You know? So then I went to Andrews. And that's where I met my wife, Alicia.
Your wife was at Andrews.
She was. She's a PT by profession, but she wanted to continue growing, and she was there starting the Master of Divinity program as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so we met.
Oh, she did Master in Divinity.
That's right.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so she had done a Master in Anthropology before, but. She wanted.
She's a physical therapist. She has a master in anthropology. She likes to study.
She likes to study. Yeah, exactly. So she was starting the program, so we started at the same time and studying Greek and
so
and
that's
classes.
How you guys met.
Yeah, that's how we met.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So since then, you've been all over the place.
yeah, since then we had two sons, Gabriel and Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
And through that we realized how much we needed to grow, because there
Yes.
is nothing better to show you who you are as you are seeing your kids grow.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
so we are blessed in amazing ways with Gabriel and Daniel, and we finished our MDiv, got
Mhm.
married, and then went back to Ecuador. Lived
She
there
went
for,
to
yeah, she
Ecuador.
went to Ecuador, so we lived there for 6 years.
That's why she speaks Spanish.
That's right.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we lived there for 6 years. It was great for me, and it was difficult for her.
I
It
bet.
was not easy, just the culture shock and language and everything else. But it was yeah, 6 very intense years. We pastored, we were in churches, did a lot of stuff in ministry there for 6 years. Then I came back to the States. Wanted to do more studies, so was pastoring in Texas while doing
Hmm.
my Doctor of Ministry program. And then in 2011, accepted a call to go to the mission field. So we went to Thailand, spent five
Oh,
years
that's
there.
right. That's
Yeah,
right. Hmm.
spent 5 years in Thailand, and it was amazing because it's just realizing that there are people who are different than you, who see the world completely different. They have a completely different worldview, but they love and do the best that they can.
Hmm.
So spending time there opened our eyes to the reality of
How long were you
people.
there?
We were there 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah. So we found that we were in Thailand. So Thai people are beautiful people. The main religion there is Buddhism.
Hmm.
There are many very interesting things about Buddhism. At the same time, we wanted to see how to share the God that we have met
And
with
we
them.
can do
Yeah.
another podcast just on
Mhm.
Thailand
Yeah.
from your experience being a missionary there.
Yeah, so
I love it.
that was amazing experience. We made beautiful friends,
Mhm.
learned a lot of wonderful things, and at the same time, try to create spaces, where we could spend time with people and share our beliefs, the ways we had experienced God in our lives, and it was beautiful. God bless that. So we spent 6 years there, then moved to Michigan.
Mhm.
And then while we were there, I spent about 5 years doing mission.
I think that's when we met.
That's right. Yeah,
That's
that's the
right.
first time we met.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right, in a class.
Mhm.
And then after that, spent 5 years doing missions and training missionaries in Africa. That was
Mhm.
another fascinating aspect of life, because
So
then
you
again,
would go to Africa or just train them here?
actually go to Africa. So we had many projects in West and North Africa, animistic and Muslim countries. And again, fascinating people, beautiful people, trying to be faithful to what they
We
had.
go there to help
Mhm.
them, but in reality, we are the ones who are
Oh
completely
yes,
changed.
yes, exactly. It changes you. You realize that there are people who fear God everywhere,
Yes.
and it's just trying to
Even though they don't quite understand the Creator God as we do,
yeah,
they have sometimes they have a love and respect for God that even we don't have.
exactly.
So it's amazing.
Exactly, it's amazing. Yeah, learn a lot. Was able to as you said, as much as we are teaching, we are actually learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, about their culture, their lives, and their experiences with God as well, because God is active everywhere.
Exactly.
Sometimes we're not aware of that, but God is there. So after that, 3 years ago, we had the privilege to move here to the Carolinas, and
That is awesome.
yeah.
That is awesome. And we're working together now.
Yes. Mhm.
This is great. I love it. What, if you could go back in time, what would you wish that Ricardo, the young Ricardo, knew back then? Let's say the times that you were struggling
Mhm.
with your faith and with legalism and things like that. What is one thing that you wish you would know?
I don't know if this will answer your question specifically, but I'll tell you this. My parents are aging. I
Okay.
have an 80-year-old dad, and my mom is 78. And I have been away from them for a long time. Yeah.
Got it.
So I realized that there is a price for the things that you do. Like in many ways, oh, how fun, you have traveled all over. Yeah. But I have not had the opportunity to be close to my family, my cousins, and everything else. So if I could go back, it's a difficult question to answer. Hey, would you do the same thing? I'm not sure. That's a
Maybe you
difficult thing.
would, because
But this one thing that I wish I had done more of, and that even today I can try to do more of, is to really develop deep relationships with people. You know,
Got it.
one of the prices of moving to so many places, I think, is not having the depth of relationships. You know, and I think today, young people, you know, my experience something similar. You know, for different reasons. You know, I don't know if technology is part of that. Whatever it is, it's just I wish I had taken more time to develop deep relationships. I have friends that I can go back to and continue conversations as if we had talked just yesterday, but they're not very many. You know, many times my kids, my sons, they say, "Hey, what are your friends, Dad?" You know, and I have to think about it, yeah, because I know a lot of people, but deep relationships, not so many. So
Got
if
it.
I could go back in life, I think I would spend much more time developing deeper relationships.
That is great. What is an advice, and I'm sure it's going to be related to what you just said, but what advice do you have for this young person who's going through some of the struggles that you went through?
Yeah, you know, I was sharing my experience, part of what I'm sharing with you now, at a church, and I told them, look, I came here when I was 18. There is a life with my relatives that I have no connection with. You know, and there were many who could relate to that. You know, so probably if you came here when you were young or in your teen years, and you miss having spent time with family and with relatives, it is hard. It is difficult. You did not make the choice. In my case, I made the choice. You know, but for many of you, your parents have made the choice. So you are
Yeah.
here without a choice, and you're suffering and paying the price for that. You know, so it's hard. It is just hard. I would say just learn to feel it. You know, do
Yeah.
not push it
And
away.
when they have opportunity, when
Yeah,
they're older, have
exactly.
money, make
And then
opportunity to go see family.
exactly, connect with family. I think there is something that is called third culture kids. You know, for those who for young people whose parents have moved from different places, so you might look like you belong to another place, but you're actually from here. Culturally, but people from here do not see you as from here.
Exactly.
You know, so if you can relate to this, just know that there is a richness that people like you have. So take advantage of that, but take time to mourn what you have lost as well. And I think just being in touch with what is inside of you will allow you to connect with people like that. You know, my children are third culture kids, and they can go to a place and immediately connect to the people that they see are not connecting with others, just because that's how they feel as
Got
well.
it.
You know, so I think there's a cost to it, but there is also a benefit that you can take advantage. You can make a difference in somebody
Yeah.
else's life. Yeah.
Wise words. I
Mhm.
appreciate. Ricardo, this was great. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation and sharing a little bit about you.
Yeah. Thank you.
It was great getting to know you a little better. Thank you.
Thank you.